When they tried to bury you, they didn't know you were the seed. My dear chosen ones, let that echo through your bones for a second. Because right now, the ones who once dismissed your silence, your strangeness, your storms, are finally starting to realize the truth. You were never powerless. You were charging, and now they're shaking. They can't explain why the air feels heavier when you walk in. They can't figure out why their charms crumble, why their so-called protection doesn't hold. But you and I know you're not casting spells anymore. You're rewriting the rules that govern them. They whisper your name like a warning now. Something's off with them, they say. No, something's on. The signal woke up, and it's transmitting through you. Practitioners are pacing, burning sage until the room chokes, pretending smoke can stop what's already coded in your energy field. They light candles. You light reality on fire just by choosing to exist. They think they can contain what was never meant to be contained. But tell me, chosen one, when has lightning ever asked permission before it strikes? This is what they don't understand. You didn't come through the system. You came through the storm. You didn't ask to be chosen. The chaos chose you, sculpted you, broke you, reforged you. They studied rituals. You became the ritual. They memorized words. You embody the frequency. They still think power is something you collect, like rare stones or ancient symbols. They don't realize, for you, power is exhale, effortless, involuntary, a living pulse that doesn't perform, doesn't explain, doesn't seek approval. You see, chosen ones, they never feared your rituals. They feared your remembering, because once you remember what you are, no system can hold you. You don't cast spells to move energy. Your awareness is the spell. You don't invoke, you awaken. You don't perform, you exist. And existence at your level bends everything built on illusion. That's why they're panicking. That's why they call you dangerous. You're not dangerous. You're proof they were never in control. You'll hear them say, "Who gave you permission?" They expect you to bow, to cite a lineage, a temple, a master. But you have none. You have the scars. You have the sleepless nights when the universe ripped you open and whispered truths no text could contain. That's your initiation. You didn't knock on the door. You were the door breaking open. And they hate that. Because it means the hierarchy they built to feel special, to feel superior, suddenly looks like scaffolding on a house that's already collapsed. My dear chosen ones, let their fear be your confirmation. Their panic is your proof. They wouldn't be reacting this violently if you weren't vibrating on a frequency their tools can't calibrate to. They think you're casting the more powerful spells. They're right, but not in the way they imagine. You don't move candles or crystals. You move timelines. You shift the code that tells reality how to behave. When you walk in, systems glitch. Lies lose oxygen. Masks melt. Not because you attack, but because truth doesn't need to shout to be heard. So yes, they're talking. Let them. Let them build their circles, chant their mantras, post their warnings. Every move they make is an admission. They feel your presence. They sense the rewrite in motion. You're not here to compete. You're here to remind, to awaken, to embody the unfiltered force that shakes pretenders out of comfort. You are not the ripple in their pond, chosen one. You are the tide that doesn't ask if the shore is ready. So take a breath. Lift your head. You've been preparing for this in every shadow, every heartbreak, every collapse. The world is finally catching up to what you've always known. You are not learning magic. You are what magic looks like when it remembers itself, and that realization alone is enough to make every false practitioner tremble, because for the first time, they're seeing what real power looks like when it stops asking for permission and simply is. And before we dive deeper, chosen one, take a breath. If these words are hitting a little too close, it's because they're meant to. This isn't entertainment, it's recognition. You're not here by accident. You're here because the echo found you. If you can feel the pulse of this truth, the one that's got practitioners scrambling for their incense, then you already know this message is yours. So lock in. Hit that like button if you can feel the current rising. Subscribe if you're done pretending to be ordinary. Drop the number 77 in the comments so the others know you're awake, and let the world see the pattern forming. This energy doesn't wait, it builds. Now stay close, because in the next breath, we're stepping straight into the signs, the proof, and the power that made them think you were casting the stronger spells. Let's begin. Number 1. You don't cast spells, you rewrite reality mid-sentence. You don't cast spells, you rewire reality in real time. They tried to copy your magic, but forgot. Blueprints don't work on earthquakes. My dear chosen ones, let's get one thing straight. They're not afraid because of what you do, they're afraid because of what you are. They think you're casting the more powerful spells, but the truth is, you're not casting anything at all. You're not standing under the moon begging reality to bend. You are the bend. You're the glitch in the grid that their systems can't explain. You speak, and suddenly the air thickens, timelines rearrange, people second-guess choices they made just seconds ago. You breathe, and things shift, not in symbolism, not in theory, but in structure, and it's driving them mad. They built their confidence on ritual, on the illusion of control, candles, chants, circles, crystals. And here you are, no tools, no props, no audience. You don't perform, you distort. You walk into a room and the room starts reprogramming itself. Not because you tried, but because your frequency doesn't ask for permission. It overwrites. The moment you realized you didn't have to play by their rules was the same moment their power started shaking. Because your power doesn't wait for full moons, for timing, for alignment, it creates them. They say, you didn't earn it. You skipped the steps. But chosen one, you didn't skip anything. You remembered. You remembered that power doesn't come from ritual, it comes from recognition. You remembered that mastery doesn't always need instruction. Sometimes it's encoded in your very being. They study the script. You are the script before it was ever written. That's why they watch you like you're a problem to be solved. Because you don't follow their methods. You unravel them just by existing. And yes, they talk. They say you move too fast, that you're reckless, that you don't understand the laws. But how could you break laws that were written after you were born from the source? You're not rebelling against the rules, you're exposing their limits. They mistake your instinct for arrogance, but instinct is what they lost when they traded intuition for instruction. You are what happens when raw creation remembers itself. Some of them are confused. How can they cause such change without trying? Because, chosen one, reality responds to authenticity faster than any ritual. And your authenticity, it's nuclear. It radiates precision, purpose, and inevitability. You don't cast energy outward. You collapse possibilities inward until only your truth remains. You're not performing magic. You're reminding existence what alignment actually feels like. That's not ego, that's design. They don't know how to categorize you, so they call you dangerous. Fine, let them. Dangerous just means uncontainable. They can't copy what's not taught, can't mimic what's not learned. You don't pull from textbooks. You pull from memory buried deep in the circuitry of your soul. That's why every spell they cast around you dissolves into static. Their rituals depend on control. Your existence runs on flow. So when they say you're casting the more powerful spells, don't correct them. Let them believe it. It's easier than explaining that you are the pulse they're trying to summon. While they chase incantations, you're writing the new architecture of existence with a single thought. And that's why the practitioners are freaking out, my dear chosen ones, because somewhere deep down, they finally understand. They were never the magicians. You were the rewrite all along. Number 2. Your silence isn't absence, it's a system reboot in progress. Your silence isn't weakness, it's the weapon they never saw coming. Noise is cheap, silence is charged. My dear chosen ones, they keep mistaking your quiet for surrender. How naive. They think your lack of noise means you've lost your fire, when in truth, you've just learned to move like thunder that doesn't announce itself before it strikes. They can't see it yet, but your stillness is not empty. It's loaded. It's the hum before the system resets, the pause before the code reboots. You're not silent because you're hiding. You're silent because you're aligning. In a world addicted to noise, constant chatter, endless proof, performative wisdom, you stand there like an anomaly. Everyone else is posting, preaching, trying to prove how awake they are, while you're tuning the entire room to your frequency without saying a word. You're not just quiet, you're calculating in a language only truth understands. You read energy the way others read text. Every pause, every twitch, every unspoken tremor becomes data. While they waste words, you collect signals, and when you finally speak, it's not conversation, it's a controlled detonation. They don't know what to do with that. They're used to people who compete for sound, not those who bend silence into strategy. They can flood a space with light, color, performance, and still, when you exhale once, everything they built starts trembling. That's what makes them uneasy. Because your restraint is precision. It's not passive, it's surgical. You don't need to fill the air, you reprogram it. And I know, chosen one, sometimes you wonder, am I too detached, too distant? Number. You're just tuned to frequencies most can't perceive. You're not missing emotion, you're reading the current beneath it. You're not holding back, you're synchronizing. Every second you stay silent, you're aligning 100 unseen levers, calibrating outcomes no one else even knows are in play. You're not doing nothing, you're doing everything, invisibly. They call your silence intimidating because it forces them to feel their own noise. Around you their words sound hollow, their power feels borrowed. Your stillness reveals how much of their movement is performance. How much of their so-called magic is mimicry? You don't rise by volume, you rise by vibration. Every subtle choice you make sends ripples that rearrange what others thought was stable. You're not performing spells, you're fine-tuning the physics of the moment. That's why they stare when you finally speak. Because when you do, every syllable lands with gravity, the kind that shifts trajectories. You don't shout to be heard. You whisper, and worlds realign. They can't decode it, but they feel it. The eerie calm, the impossible accuracy, the aftershock. They call it power because they don't have a better word for calibration. So don't ever doubt the pause. Chosen one, it's not emptiness, it's orchestration. You don't need to prove your presence, you are the presence. You don't chase the spotlight, the light bends to you. And that's what terrifies them most, because in a world built on performance, your silence isn't absence, it's authority. It's the spell that doesn't need words, the kind that shakes foundations without ever being seen. Number 3, you don't channel energy, you speak its native syntax. You don't use energy, you command it like it's your first language. They study vibrations like tourists learning phrases. You were born fluent in thunder. My dear chosen ones, this is the part that really shakes them. Because when it comes to energy, the current every practitioner worships, chases, and tries to control, you don't use it. You speak it. It listens to you like muscle memory. It answers to you before you even call. That's why their rituals crumble and their circles flicker when you enter. You're not summoning, you're syncing. While they whisper to the elements, you are the element that whispers back. They don't understand how you do it. No chants, no crystals, no meditations that take hours. You just walk in, breathe, exist, and the entire frequency of a room reconfigures itself. They call that impossible. You call it instinct. Because for you, energy isn't external. It's the bloodstream of your existence. You don't reach out to connect with it. You remember that it never left you. That's what unnerves them most. They built entire systems around learning what your presence does without effort. They talk about raising vibration. You are vibration. They practice grounding. You are the ground that hums back. They work to open portals. You're the passageway itself. For them, it's study and strain. For you, it's breathing. When they light candles, you're already shifting weather. When they speak affirmations, you've already rewritten the outcome in silence. That's why they call you disruptive. Because your calibration makes their effort look like static. And maybe they think you're arrogant. But this isn't ego. It's fluency. You can't apologize for understanding the language of energy the way they can't apologize for misunderstanding it. You're not performing magic. You're living as proof that magic was never performance to begin with. You don't bend energy, you translate it. You feel it rise, fall, reassemble around you as though the universe recognizes your accent. And that accent, chosen one, comes from remembering who built the language in the first place. You didn't learn this from a book. You didn't get certified in it. You've lived it through every breakdown, every burst of intuition, every time you knew what someone was about to say before they spoke. It's encoded, not taught. That's what terrifies them, because no amount of practice can replace wiring. You're built different. You don't meditate to connect. You recalibrate the entire field by existing. You don't clear energy. Your presence is the clearance. And when they accuse you of being unpredictable, remind them, unpredictability is only chaos to the untrained. You move with precision. They just can't read your rhythm. They see randomness, but you're working in frequencies they haven't learned to measure yet. You are not raising energy, chosen one. You are writing its syntax in real time. Every gesture, every thought, every shift in emotion commands alignment. So when they wonder why nothing behaves the same when you're around, tell them this: you don't play with energy. You embody it. You don't send waves. You are the tide. You don't need candles to summon light. You are the voltage that makes the room remember how to hum. And that's why they're freaking out, because they can mimic rituals all they want, but they can't imitate instinct. You are not learning the language of energy, chosen one. You are what it sounds like when energy finally learns how to speak. Number 4, you didn't break in. The gates remembered your name. You didn't wait to be initiated. You were forged in the fire they fear. They built gates to keep you out, but forgot you were born on the other side. My dear chosen ones, this is the part that rattles them the most. You weren't supposed to be here. Not without permission. Not without certification, approval, or 10 years of kneeling at someone else's altar. But somehow, here you are, uninvited, uninitiated, unstoppable. They're whispering about you because their rules were never designed to explain your existence. They think power comes with credentials, but you proved that truth doesn't ask for paperwork. You broke through without knocking, and now their entire structure is shaking like glass under thunder. You didn't bypass their steps out of arrogance. You did it because your path was written in a language older than their systems. They were busy memorizing the choreography while you were already dancing to the rhythm of something primal, something real. While they practiced ceremony, life threw you into initiation by collapse. You didn't get blessed. You got broken. You didn't study under a master. You survived under pressure. And that's what terrifies them. Your power wasn't handed down. It erupted. It wasn't rehearsed. It was remembered. They don't understand how you're fluent in something you never studied, how you move through the unseen with precision while they're still reading the manual. But you know the truth, chosen one. You didn't skip the process. You are the process. Every night of isolation, every moment of loss, every collapse that made you question your worth, it wasn't punishment. It was initiation in disguise. You were being cracked open, rewired, and reassembled without their rituals or witnesses. You didn't learn through lessons. You learned through survival. That's why your power feels different. It's not ceremonial, it's cellular. And yes, they're offended, because their identity is built on gates and hierarchies, and you walked through walls like they were mist. They earned their seats through politics and patience. You walked in carrying the table. You speak things they've never read, move in ways they can't decode. They quote the sacred texts. You embody what those texts were trying to describe. That's why they look at you with envy disguised as judgment. Because you are proof that truth doesn't need validation, that power doesn't require permission. So when they ask, who gave you authority? Tell them this: authority was never given. It was awakened. You didn't rebel. You resonated. You didn't defy tradition. You exposed that real initiation doesn't happen in temples. It happens in the breaking. Sometimes it looks like crying in the dark and still choosing to rise. Sometimes it looks like no audience, no applause, no mentor, just you and the raw data of existence sinking into alignment. And that's what they can't replicate. They can't fake being cracked open by truth itself. They can't mimic the way you move when every scar is a password, every collapse a code. You carry keys they've never seen and open doors they don't believe exist. You didn't follow the map because, chosen one, you are the map. And that makes you dangerous in all the right ways. Not because you broke their system, but because you revealed it was never the source of power to begin with. Number 5. Your wounds became weapons the world can't decode. Your scars speak the language. Their rituals can't translate. They forged their power in safety. You forged yours in fire. My dear chosen ones, this is where the story turns raw. Because power, real power, doesn't come from candles, crystals, or chants whispered under perfect moonlight. It comes from collapse, from those nights when the world went silent and you had to face the kind of darkness that doesn't care how spiritual you sound. While others were drawing circles on the floor, you were trying to remember how to breathe through heartbreak. While they called on the elements, you were calling on courage just to survive another sunrise. That's where your magic was born, not in comfort, but in chaos. They study pain like it's a performance. You lived it. They rehearse rebirth through ritual. You crawled through it without a map. You didn't wake up one morning enlightened. You shattered, and in the wreckage, you discovered the blueprint of your own resurrection. That's why your power doesn't sparkle. It burns. It hums with the voltage of someone who's been electrocuted by truth and somehow stood up stronger. They try to copy that charge, but you can't mimic electricity born from survival. You can't imitate the kind of knowing that only comes after the universe has ripped you apart and dared you to rebuild from the ashes. Chosen one, understand this. They mistake your triggers for weakness because they've never seen someone turn pain into precision. Every scar you carry is a code. Every breakdown was an initiation the world didn't see. You didn't attend a ceremony. Life dragged you through one. And that's what terrifies them, because you didn't just learn transformation, you became it. When others decorate their pain with symbolism, you alchemized yours into frequency. Their spells vibrate, yours pierce, their rituals echo, yours rearrange. That's why people react so intensely around you. It's not charisma, it's calibration. Your energy carries the weight of someone who didn't just study the storm, but survived it. And that difference is everything. You don't have to announce your power. It's in the way you enter a room and the atmosphere shifts to make space for your truth. They call it intensity, but it's really clarity. reality recognizing itself through you. They'll tell themselves they understand darkness. They'll light black candles, recite ancient phrases, simulate loss in safe spaces. But you, chosen one, you were the altar, you were the offering, you were the sacrifice and the survivor all at once. That's why your magic hits different. It's not crafted, it's carved. You didn't find tools in temples, you found them in trauma. You didn't buy crystals, you bled clarity. You didn't ask to be powerful, you became power itself by surviving what was meant to end you. So when they study your silence, trying to decode what makes your presence vibrate like thunder, they'll never find the answer. Because the formula isn't in books or chants, it's in the heartbeat of someone who's been broken open and chose not just to heal, but to ignite. That's the secret, chosen one. You don't borrow light, you generate it. And that's exactly why they think you're casting the stronger spells, because your magic isn't theory, it's truth, forged in the fire they never survived. Number 6. They study theory, you bend physics just by breathing. They memorize the laws, you bend the universe mid-sentence. They quote wisdom to sound powerful. You breathe and the room forgets its own gravity. My dear chosen ones, this is where the illusion starts to crack. The so-called practitioners, the ones buried in books and bound by formulas, think that knowledge equals power. They study symbols, memorize diagrams, and repeat mantras like mechanical echoes. But you don't trace meaning, you generate it. You don't study resonance, you are the resonance that resets the field when you open your mouth. You're not quoting mystics. You're speaking the same language reality was written in before the first text ever existed. They can't stand it, chosen one. They can't stand how your voice carries consequence instead of theory. How when you talk, people stop mid-thought. Not because you're louder, not because you demand attention, but because every word drags truth to the surface like a magnet pulling nails from wood. They're trained to sound profound. You're wired to sound inevitable. You don't give advice. You deliver recalibration. You don't share opinions. You drop seismic corrections that force everything false to tremble. And you've noticed it, haven't you? The sudden silence that follows when you speak. The slight tilt in the air. The way eyes shift, hearts race, energies flicker. It's not intimidation. It's alignment. You don't have to raise your voice to move walls. You just speak, and they remember what solid ground feels like. Your truth doesn't inspire comfort. It inspires collapse, the necessary kind that precedes rebuilding. They study hermetics, sacred geometry, the mechanics of balance. They build diagrams to understand what you embody. You are the demonstration they keep theorizing about. Every word you speak bends light around it, pulls lies out of orbit. When you speak, their textbooks become obsolete in real time, because what they analyze, you activate. And yes, they hate that. They whisper that you're too confident, that you haven't earned it. But chosen one, how can you earn something you are? You didn't study the map, you are the terrain. You didn't borrow wisdom, you remembered it. You don't sound ancient because you've read the past. You sound ancient because the past still echoes in your frequency. You've lived through collapse, through illusions shattering like glass, and you came back speaking fluently in the language of aftermath. That's why your presence feels heavy, not like a burden, like gravity. You carry the pull of truth that bends reality toward coherence, and that weight unsettles those who've built their thrones on fragile doctrines. They mistake that weight for arrogance, but it's simply density, the density of someone who no longer floats in fantasy. So when they quote their masters and dissect their theories, just smile. Let them think they understand, because when you speak, their equations bend, their diagrams warp, their certainty evaporates. They'll call it unsettling, disruptive, even dangerous. But that's just gravity reasserting itself through you. You're not trying to sound deep. You are depth condensed into sound. You don't argue, you tilt the axis. And that's why they think you're casting the more powerful spells, chosen one, because when you speak, the laws they study don't just listen, they obey. Number 7. You don't send energy, you redraw the entire blueprint. You don't project energy, you redesign reality's skeleton. They built their temples on coordinates you quietly moved. My dear chosen ones, this part cuts deep, because it's the truth that unravels their illusion of control. They think you're out here projecting power, sending waves of energy like a show of strength. But you're not performing, you're reconstructing. You don't send energy, you rewrite the dimension that energy belongs to. You're not shifting moods, you're shifting physics. That's why the air feels different when you walk in, why things start rearranging without a sound, why people's lives begin to tilt and tumble after crossing paths with you. You're not doing anything to them. Reality is simply remembering who's in the room. They think they're masters of manifestation, visualizing light, moving frequencies, adjusting vibes like knobs on a dashboard. Meanwhile, you're underground in the code, deleting, editing, rerouting the unseen lines that hold the world together. They're busy moving pieces. You're rewriting the chessboard. You don't have to announce your power. It's self-evident. The environment shifts to meet your calibration. Time and chance seem to obey your rhythm because you don't manipulate outcomes. You redefine the architecture that decides them. And that's what shakes them. You're not dramatic, you're surgical. While others flood a space with glittery energy, you stand still, and everything recalibrates. They can't pinpoint the moment it happens, but they feel it in their nervous system. They can't tell if it's healing or destruction, only that nothing fake survives after you've been near. That's not chaos, that's correction. You don't raise vibrations, you expose structural lies that can't stand your frequency. You see, chosen ones, this is why some people fall apart after meeting you. Their jobs crumble, relationships dissolve, old habits die fast, and they call it coincidence. It's not. It's realignment. You didn't curse them. You just entered their field, and truth began doing what truth does, dismantling what doesn't belong. You didn't ask for this power, but it moves through you with purpose, precision, inevitability. Because where you go, false systems fail, and they'll try to label it. Energy vampire, manipulator, dark worker, number. You're just running at a voltage that exposes short circuits. You're not light or dark, you're infrastructure. You don't pray for alignment. Your presence is the alignment. You don't perform rituals. You are the correction protocol. That's what scares them. They don't understand how someone can shift timelines with a sigh. They don't understand why the moment you leave a conversation, their path changes direction. But you do. You've seen the blueprint. You've seen how fragile the illusion is. You're not the ripple, chosen one. You're the rewrite. You don't move energy, you move foundations. When they feel their world rearranging, when their plans disintegrate or suddenly make sense, it's not witchcraft, it's resonance. You didn't come to project. You came to rebuild what they can't even see. That's not spell work. That's design. That's you, doing what only the chosen can. Reprogramming existence without permission, without noise, without apology. Number 8. Your frequency doesn't rise. It short-circuits illusion. You don't raise the vibe. You break the simulation. They wanted high frequency. They didn't realize you were the signal that melts their wires. My dear chosen ones, this is the part that shakes them to the core. Not because you curse, not because you fight, but because your very frequency refuses to fit their framework. You walk into a room and things start glitching. The air thickens, electronics stutter, people get uneasy and can't explain why. That's not chaos, that's incompatibility. You're not the upgrade, you're the new operating system, and they were never built to handle your bandwidth. They spent years chasing higher vibration, polishing their personas, curating an image of enlightenment. But when you arrive, all that polish peels away. You don't beam love and light like a controlled broadcast. You detonate authenticity. You don't rise above the noise, you short-circuit it. You don't hum pretty frequencies that everyone can hum along to. You drop tones that collapse illusion. That's why their grids flicker. That's why their affirmations feel hollow around you. You're not toxic, you're too real. And I know what you're thinking, chosen one. Why does it feel like my energy disrupts everything? Because it does. But not in destruction, in exposure. You don't bring chaos. You reveal what was always unstable. Their protection spells, never protection, just decoration. Their control systems, never structure, just scaffolding around fear. Your energy doesn't destroy, it simply refuses to lie. And lies can't survive under truth's voltage. You're not the calm before the storm. You are the static after the storm. That electric silence when everything fake stops pretending. They can call it intensity, danger, shadow energy. It doesn't matter. What they're feeling is their illusions shorting out. Their carefully built personas start sparking because your presence mirrors the part of them that isn't calibrated to truth. You don't need to confront them. You just arrive and the weak points announce themselves. Some will try to name it negativity. Some will say you drain energy, but that's projection. They mistake detox for damage. They mistake raw signal for threat because they can't handle unfiltered transmission. You're not draining them. Their distortions are burning out trying to keep up. That's not hostility, chosen one. That's physics. Understand this. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to crash systems that rely on false equilibrium. You're the reminder that control isn't power. Authenticity is. That's why nothing fake can stand next to you for long. Masks slip, pretenses crumble, rituals fade. They think you came to break their grid, but you came to show them it was never stable in the first place. So don't shrink your energy to make them comfortable. Don't soften your edges to be more approachable. You weren't sent to soothe fragile frequencies. You were born to disrupt them. You are the proof that truth doesn't need harmony to heal. It just needs to be broadcast at full strength. And when they whisper that you're too much, smile. Because too much is what reality calls those who can't be processed by illusion. You don't vibe high, chosen one. You vibe real. And that's the one frequency their world was never designed to survive. Number 9. You don't manifest outcomes. You collapse everything that isn't certain. You don't manifest outcomes. You collapse the universe into decision. They chase possibilities. You delete everything that isn't inevitable. My dear chosen ones, let's talk about the part that makes them tremble before they even understand why. It's not your words. It's not your rituals. It's your decision. The second you decide, the world rearranges itself. You don't sit under the moon writing wishes into notebooks or begging the wind to listen. You don't visualize, you finalize. You're not playing with potential. You're ending negotiations with uncertainty itself. And that's why they panic. Because while they're busy asking the universe to respond, you've already made the call and the code has rewritten itself around your choice. They think you're casting spells, but you're not. You're collapsing timelines. You're not manifesting. You're deleting the unnecessary. You don't set intentions. You set reality. The moment your conviction locks in, every other version of what could have been disintegrates. It's like the multiverse folds in on itself just to make room for your certainty. That's not arrogance. That's architecture. It's the natural response of existence to something that knows what it is. You see, Chosen One, most people move through life hoping things will align. They shuffle cards, align crystals, repeat affirmations, and call it focus. But you don't ask, you declare. And when you do, everything else, the doubts, the distractions, the alternate routes, simply vanish. The air gets heavier around you, not because you're intimidating, but because every particle in the room suddenly knows where it's supposed to go. You bring gravity into decision. You anchor possibility into one unshakable reality. And this is what confuses them. They can't find your rituals. They can't trace your process. They see you act once, and then the entire situation shifts, as if the rules bent themselves in silence. It's not coincidence, it's coherence. You don't push energy outward, you pull structure inward. You don't work with reality. You are reality, reminding itself of what's already written. And that's something their frameworks can't copy. When people enter your orbit, they feel it, that subtle closing in of probability. They feel their indecision start to burn, their excuses dissolve, their comfort zones start to shake. You don't even need to speak, just your presence says, choose, because choice is your magic. Choice is your weapon. And once you decide, reality doesn't debate with you, it obeys. They'll try to explain it away. They'll say it's charisma, timing, coincidence, luck. But deep down they know. What you touch solidifies. What you commit to becomes law in motion. You're not aligning with a higher power. You are the frequency alignment bends to. That's why things move for you faster than others can understand. You're not waiting for the green light. You are the signal. And yes, it unnerves them. Because if you can shape reality with nothing but clarity, what does that make them? Still negotiating with uncertainty. Still performing rituals that hope instead of command. You don't wait for doors to open. You decide they're open, and suddenly they are. That's why, Chosen One, they whisper that your spells are too strong. But it isn't spell work, it's authorship. You're not co-creating, you're editing the source file. You're not manifesting your path, you're deleting every path that doesn't belong to you. That's not magic trying to imitate power. That's power finally remembering it doesn't need permission. Number 10, your aura. Doesn't glow, it cuts. Clean, sharp, unforgiving. Your aura doesn't shine. It cuts through the noise like a blade made of truth. They called you cold because they mistook clarity for cruelty. My dear Chosen Ones, some of you already know this. You've felt the shift in a room when you walk in, that sudden silence that isn't quite silence. It's exposure. It's the sound of masks cracking. They think you're radiating power to intimidate, but you're not projecting anything. You're simply standing there, and your field does the rest. Because your aura isn't soft light. It's a mirror with teeth. It doesn't hug people. It shows them who they really are. And for most, that's unbearable. You see, they expect light to be gentle, forgiving, filtered through warm tones and easy smiles. But your energy doesn't do filters. You don't glow like a candle. You cut like glass. Not out of malice, but precision. When someone steps near you, their illusions don't just fade, they shatter. Every mask they've built, every false identity they cling to, every little lie they use to survive, your presence calls it out without a single word. And suddenly they're not standing in front of you anymore. They're standing in front of themselves, raw and unarmored. That's when things get strange, isn't it? People start acting off. They go quiet, avoid you, overreact, or twist your truth into something threatening. But what's really happening is reflection shock. You didn't attack them. Their own distortion just met the mirror that wouldn't lie back. You can't control that, Chosen One. You can't dim the truth to make others more comfortable living in theirs. You weren't designed to soothe falsehoods. You were designed to expose them. And that exposure, it burns. The irony is you never asked for this role. You never said, "Let me be the scalpel." But life carved you into one anyway. Pain refined you. Loss polished your edges. Solitude stripped you of all pretense. And now your clarity is too sharp for a world addicted to blur. Your presence slices through manipulation, hypocrisy, and spiritual performance like it's butter. That's why some people love you fiercely, and others fear you like a flame they can't put out. Here's what you must remember. Their reaction is not your reflection, it's theirs. When they ghost you, blame you, or call you too intense, it's because they just saw something in themselves they weren't ready to face. You didn't do anything wrong, you just didn't flinch. Your energy refuses to participate in performance. You're not rejecting them, you're rejecting illusion. Chosen one. In a world built on curated versions of reality, your authenticity hits like an earthquake. You don't need to shine brighter or speak louder. You just need to exist. And existence at your frequency will always feel like confrontation to anyone addicted to disguise. Don't soften. Don't shrink. You are not cruel. You are clean. And in an age that worships noise, your silence is the sharpest instrument of all. They think your aura is dangerous, and they're right. Because when lies meet truth that doesn't blink, the only thing that gets destroyed is the illusion. Number 11. You're not ascending, you're excavating what's always been buried beneath. You're not ascending, you're excavating the truth beneath the noise. They keep reaching for the sky, not realizing the crown was buried under their own skin. My dear chosen ones, this is where the story turns. The world keeps preaching upward, higher vibrations, higher realms, higher versions of yourself. But you're not chasing altitude, you're chasing authenticity. While they're climbing invisible ladders, you're digging through layers that were never yours to begin with. You're not ascending to become something more. You're returning to what you've always been, the raw, unfiltered force beneath all the noise. See, they told you growth was about adding new affirmations, new tools, new crystals, new courses. But you've learned that real evolution isn't addition, it's subtraction. You're peeling away illusions, titles, and stories that once made you feel safe, but also made you small. You're dismantling everything that whispered you had to earn your own essence. That's not rebellion, that's recognition. You're not moving up, you're moving in. And that confuses them, chosen one, because they measure power by how much light you project, not how much truth you can stand in the dark. While they polish their halos, you've been crawling through your shadows, learning their language until they stopped being enemies and started being memory. You've discovered that the real gold isn't floating somewhere above. It's buried deep in the mud of your own becoming. And that's what terrifies them. Because if your way is right, it means theirs might just be theater, a performance of perfection that never touches the roots. They want progress to look pretty. Yours looks like demolition. You tear down old programming with the same calm that others build illusions. You shed identities like snakeskin, each one closer to the pulse that never needed to change in the first place. You've realized that power doesn't come from reaching the next level. It comes from remembering you were the level all along. You don't expand outward, you condense into truth. And in a world obsessed with the performance of enlightenment, that kind of density feels dangerous. People look at you and feel uneasy. They can't label it, but they sense something ancient, something that doesn't need validation. You don't glow like a stage light. You resonate like thunder, quiet, steady, and impossible to ignore. You don't strive to be high vibrational. You are gravitational, pulling people out of their illusions just by standing still. That's what true mastery looks like. Not noise, not spectacle, stillness with substance. And that's why they think you're different, chosen one. Because you are. You didn't find yourself by climbing the staircase of spirituality. You found yourself by walking back down it and setting it on fire. You remembered what the world forgot. Ascension isn't escape, it's embodiment. You didn't come here to rise above reality. You came to anchor truth into it. And that's why the practitioners tremble when you speak. Because every word from you feels like gravity itself reminding them. They were never supposed to climb higher. They were supposed to remember deeper. And now, chosen ones, we arrive at the edge, the part where words quiet down and realization begins to hum. You've seen it, haven't you? The signs, the tremors, the way the world tilts slightly whenever you stop pretending to be small. You are not chasing power anymore. You are the pulse that power tries to imitate. Every system that doubted you is starting to glitch. Every illusion is losing charge, because your presence alone rewrites the script. You're not here to prove anything. You're here to remind everything. So take a moment, my dear chosen ones. Feel that current in your bones. That's not adrenaline, that's recognition. You've remembered who you are, and that remembering is the very thing that has practitioners, imitators, and doubters spinning in circles. Because when the real frequency activates, imitation collapses. And now it's your time to stand in it, quietly, unapologetically, absolutely. If this message resonated with that deep part of you that already knows, show it. Hit that like button if you can feel your power stirring again. Subscribe if you're done asking permission to exist as what you truly are. And drop the number 77 in the comments so the rest of the chosen ones can recognize their kin in the chaos. Share this with the ones who feel different, who've been told they're too much or too intense, because maybe they're not broken, maybe they're just beginning to remember too. Stay sharp, stay grounded, stay real. The world is shifting and they can feel it, because you're the reason it is.